สวัสดีครับคุณผู้ชมอยู่กับรายการ TISCO Fun Station Live นะครับวันนี้กับผมเสาภพยนต์ศรีเหมือนเดิมนะครับซึ่งหัวข้อที่เราหยิบยกมาพูดคุยกันในวันนี้นะครับก็จะเป็นประเด็นที่กำลังร้อนแรงมากๆนะครับก็คือในเรื่องของราคาทองคำนะครับซึ่งคุณผู้ชมนักลงทุนถามกันเข้ามาเยอะมากว่าปีนี้ทองคำขึ้นมาเยอะนะครับหลังจากนี้จะเป็นอย่างไรต่อไปรวมถึงภาพการลงทุนระยะยาวนะครับทองคำยังจะเป็นสินทรัพย์ที่นักลงทุนทั่วโลกนั้นให้ความสำคัญอยู่หรือเปล่านะครับราคาทองคำจะไปถึงระดับไหนในปีนี้นะครับซึ่งในวันนี้ต้องบอกว่าเป็นเทปที่พิเศษมากๆนะครับซึ่งเราได้แขกรับเชิญต้องบอกว่าใช้คำว่าระดับโลกได้เลยนะครับเพราะว่าเราได้นักวิเคราะห์จาก World Gold Council นะครับมาให้มุมมองในเรื่องของราคาทองคำกันนะครับก็เพื่อไม่ให้เป็นการเสียเวลาเดี๋ยวผมจะเชิญแขกรับเชิญของผมในวันนี้เลยละกันนะครับ It's my pleasure to welcome our guest Marissa Salim Senior Research Lead Asia Pacific at the World Gold Council. Thank you for joining us, Marissa.
Thank you, Kun Sao. It's very nice to be here.
Yeah, okay. Let's start with our first question so our audience can get to know you better. Marissa, could you briefly introduce yourself and World Gold Council, your role and how your team follow developments in the gold market?
Sure. So good afternoon and thank you again for inviting me. So my name is Marissa Salim and I'm a senior research lead at the World Gold Council. So the World Gold Council is a global market development organization for the gold industry. And our role really is to provide data, insights, and research that helps investors, policymakers, as well as institutions understand the role of gold in portfolios as well as economies. So I focus on the broader Asia Pacific region. And I'm working closely with investors as well as institutions here, including in Thailand.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And great. Thank you for that introduction. Now let's move to the gold market itself. This year we've seen gold break record high, right? What's
Yes.
really been driving this move? Central bank demand, safe haven flow, or other factor?
Sure. So I've also prepared some slides over here. Yeah. So before before we get into the gold performance outlook, I think it's also useful for us to take a step back and just remind ourselves of gold's unique role in the global economy. So as you can see here, gold is a global market, and a lot of it is actually driven by emerging market demand.
Mm-hmm.
That means most of it is really coming from Greater China, from India, and we also have demand from Southeast Asia and other parts of the world. The thing about gold's dual nature role is that, on one hand, it is a consumer good. So we have jewelry and technology. This together make up about 40% of annual demand. This just means that the gold demand is also in the hands of consumers, quite substantial at that. And jewelry alone is about 1/3. And in markets like Thailand, of course, it is deeply embedded in culture, savings, as well as gifting and weddings as well. So we also have, on the other hand, where gold is a financial asset. So around 40% of that demand comes from investment. That includes ETFs, bars and coins, and so on and so forth. And finally, we also have demand from central banks as well. That comes about 20% of total demand. So what's been happening to gold price this year? So, of course, they've maintained strong year-to-date performance. You can see in this chart. So, especially in 2025, gold has been exceptionally strong. We've seen it break record highs, and just this week it crossed above US $3,500 per ounce. So the drivers are actually quite clear. Over here, we also have significant pickup in gold-backed ETF demand. So I'll just forward on to the slide just here, so you can see there. And institutional investors have been going into gold-backed ETFs because of the current uncertainty and the flight to quality and safe haven assets as well. On the second part, another driver of gold performance this year has also been attributed to bar and coin. So bar and coin is 1 kg bar or less mostly, and coins are the coins that you can get from the retailers. So demand from bar and coin has also been very strong, particularly from retail investors looking for long-term store of value. And the third one is the central banks. So central banks have continued to diversify their assets, and one way that they do this is to accumulate gold. So they have maintained steady levels of official sector buying as well.
Okay. And looking forward to the rest of the year, what are the key factors you're watching? And if we frame it in the scenario, what would a best case and worst case outcome look like?
Sure. So on this front, I'll talk a little bit about what's happening over here. So if you look at this part, right, this outlook or potential gold price performance. So looking into the second half, as you can see in the graph, so gold performance would depend mainly on 4 things. So the first one is monetary policy, which is how quickly and how much the US Federal Reserve cuts interest rates. We also see US dollar as well as bond yields, which will affect the opportunity cost of holding gold. So if the US dollar is weaker, then that's a good sign for gold as well, because the opportunity cost to hold gold is less. The third, and probably also quite important, will be geopolitics. So as you know, the geopolitical tensions that have happened in the first half of this year, these are quite important, because it really determines the appetite for risk on or risk off for investors. And that really have an impact on gold performance, because people, if they are a bit more uncertain about how geopolitics is going to unfold, they look into safe haven assets, and gold is also a natural as well as robust choice for investors. Finally, we also have the investment as well as official sector demand, like we've mentioned just earlier on, for central banks, as well as investment from the ETF as well. So we have investment demand that we think are going to pick up for the next half of the year, especially in gold-backed ETFs. And then we also feel that there could be steady central bank buying going into the second half of the year. So this is the fourth and also quite important driver for gold. Now, with this in mind, we also see broad scenarios, right? So the first one is the base case, which is continued normalization. So by consensus, if growth stays within how economists predict and forecast, and the Fed cuts the rates quite gradually as well, and geopolitical risks do remain as how they are right now, gold will likely to deliver range-bound performance with a slight upside. So we are seeing back here, right, around 0 to 5% or higher than the current level. So this is the base case. And then next we will move on to the best case, or the bull case, we call it over here.
Yeah.
Which is if economic conditions sort of worsen. For example, we have stagflation or recession risk, and these two emerge again, they would drive investors into flight to quality. We also have the rate cuts as well as USD weakness. This also might support investor demand for gold. When we are looking at central banks accelerating diversification away from the dollar, for example, that will also support the demand for gold as well in the bull case scenario that we have. And there is also some room for gold-backed ETFs that we find right now. The first half of the year, we have around 400 tons of gold-backed ETF demand. However, if you're looking at the historical period, usually people will allocate around 700 tons, for example. So that means there's still more room to run for ETFs and futures accumulation above the current levels. And then if we just go back quickly, just to remind our audience, what is the bull case? So the bull case is between 10% to 15% from the current levels. And then finally, I think you also asked me about the bear case. So the bear case for gold, on the other hand, if risk fades and markets move on to a more risk-on mode, right? For example, growth surprises on the upside. We have stronger growth outlook, which will push the yield and US dollar higher. So then we also have the ETF outflows, and stronger or softer central bank demand could weigh in on investment component. We also have lower prices as well that can continue to attract consumers. So that is also a factor that I explained earlier on how gold has a dual nature. So this could cap further downside, because the lower prices will mean that consumers who are looking to purchase jewelry as well as other technology parts of their life, they could come back to the market because now the price is much more better for gold. So, to put it simply, gold's best case is really tied to uncertainty and also risk of sentiment. While its worst case, as you've mentioned earlier on, goes into a broad risk-on rally or resolutions in geopolitical tensions. But either way, we do feel that the steady official sector as well as the long-term investment demand provides a cushion for the performance of gold, even in a bear case scenario.
And what about your personal opinion? Are you leaning toward to the bears bull or the bear case?
Yeah, so for me, I'm leaning more towards the bull case, because gold has just crossed 3,500 mark in this week as well. And I do feel that there could be a structural long-term weakness in the US dollar, which could support, investor demand. There is also some 90% chance that the Fed would also cut rates in September. So that might come true as well. So this would just push up the opportunity cost of the opportunity cost of holding gold. But more so, I do feel the uncertainty globally, as well as fiscally, especially from the US. I think these are some of the concerns that even investors on the street, if you ask them, they have this opinion as well. So I do feel that there is more upside for gold on the back of these scenarios.
And talk about the base case with an upside only about 5%. For an investor who doesn't have any goal yet, do you think it's worth the risk to invest now?
So right now the market's heating up. So people are looking at whether the gold price has further room to run, or is it going to stay at this 3,500 level? So for an investor, if you were to talk about sometime last year, this price would probably be very, very elevated. However, we do want to send this message that gold is definitely a long-term strategic asset. So you hold it in the long term, you pass it down to the next generation, and at the same time, it has also had a pretty decent annualized return since 20 years ago. So there is no right time or wrong time to really hold gold. It is really your time. Is this your time to own gold? So this is something that the investor would decide. But that being said, the risk of not holding gold at this current macroeconomic climate would definitely not equal to the benefit, right? So if you hold a safe haven asset right now, you clearly get more benefits from it rather than not allocating in it. And the price determination is really, are you comfortable with the price, or whether you think that there's room to run? And a lot of this really matters on what your outlook is for the rest of the world, rest of the year, or even what your outlook is maybe 2 to 3 years down the line, because you need to allocate it in the long term.
Okay. And talk about the long term. What about the longer horizon? From a multi-year perspective, do you believe structural demand for gold will remain strong? And what are the main risks that could challenge gold role in portfolio over the long run?
Yeah. So in the longer term, we believe that gold demand will, of course, remain strong. And to that reason, there are several structural drivers to support this view. So the first one is central banks. So just as context, right? The US is holding some 8,000 tons of 8,000 tons of gold in India Reserve. So they have the largest gold reserves in the world. But the rest of the world, especially in emerging markets, they have single digits only. They only hold around single digit percentage of gold, in their portfolio as well. So, if I were to go back to probably a slide earlier, just to show you this one, right? So this is the reported net purchases or sales by central banks and other official institutions. The first one on the list is Poland. So Poland has been quite a buyer of gold over a long period of time. But if you're looking at this is only the first 6 months of the year. So year to date, they have allocated around 67 tons. My message really is that there is much more pent-up demand from central banks, especially from emerging market central banks. So a lot of them are looking to diversify their assets, and they're looking at gold as a safe haven, but also as an asset class within their portfolio that can hedge against inflation concerns or to diversify some of the risk and volatility as well. The second part really is the investment demand. And then for investment demand, you can even just go back to this first part, right? So these two components, which is the gold ETF as well as bar and coin, this form the investment demand. This has been very strong, especially this year. And for bar and coin, we are seeing the strongest first half bar and coin investment demand coming from India as well as China. And mostly really is coming from China. So if I were to show you again, just to recap where the bar and coin data was. So you can see here, India, China, as well as ASEAN, where we are, and rest of Asia really accounts for about 60% already of the total demand. So demand for bar and coin is really quite centered in where we are in this part of the world. And we also feel that there's also potential room for investment demand to pick up, especially in the longer term, as gold is reflecting, what is happening within geopolitics as well as geoeconomic factors as well. And we are here in Asia, and this is also a center for new structural demand, especially coming from institutional investors here. So they are looking at gold a bit more actively, and the demand from Asia as well may provide some long-term support for gold as well. You also mentioned about the risk, right? So that said, there are also risks if the global growth is, again, much stronger than expected. Investors may favor riskier assets over defensive assets like gold. Or if real interest rates stay high for an extended period of time, the opportunity cost of holding gold might rise. However, we also see recently that, gold performance, especially in the first half of this year, is underpinned by two things. Firstly, the new structural demand, especially by the official sector, central banks, as well as institution, and also the geopolitical uncertainty, where investors turn to safe haven assets in a flight to quality.
Okay, and talking about the long term, I wonder in China, do you see the risk for the younger generation? They still see the goal is the same as the past or not?
Yeah, so the one thing that we want to also share is that for China, so what's been happening recently in China, not until the past maybe 2-3 weeks, where the equity market's kind of picking up, and over longer term, when we are looking back, right, gold was really the asset for Chinese investors across all ages, especially because the equity markets were not doing that well, and then the property markets were also not doing that well. So by that default, Chinese investors started looking into gold. And a lot of these Chinese investors are looking into barring coin investment. So you can see, in the blue bar, right? The demand has actually been quite substantial for China ever since maybe early 2022, and then it picked up again sometime in late 2023, and even now, in terms of tonnage terms, most of it really is coming from Chinese demand. So if you're looking at perhaps going forward, if that really depends if any fresh stimulus that's injected into the Chinese economy would have any dampening demand from gold to other riskier assets. So that really remains to be seen. However, gold investments in China is also quite well regarded, and just recently in February 2025, the Chinese government have also had this push on gold investment, especially to the insurance agency, insurers over there. So, for example, around 1% of the top 10 Chinese insurers are now allowed to invest in gold, and previously, that such a thing was not allowed. So that's something that we see on the market development side in China that is also quite positive on the gold front.
Okay. And let's turn to the one of the most popular question investors are asking this day. Many investors now compare gold with Bitcoin as alternative store of value. How does the World Gold Council see this comparison in terms of role and use case for investors?
Sure. So thank you so much. That's an excellent question, and it's something that we hear very often. So the good thing is we've also addressed it in our research. Now there are four key things when we're talking about comparing these two assets, right? So firstly, gold versus Bitcoin, or gold and Bitcoin, they are very different asset profiles. They have very different asset profiles. So yes, both have delivered strong returns over the past 5 years, but gold and Bitcoin, they occupy very distinct ends of the volatility spectrum. For example, here, Bitcoin is showing greater price swings over the past 5 years. They're much more volatile than gold per se. And we also see maybe performance in turbulent markets. So again, they react very differently to when the market changes. So gold has demonstrated, its safe haven role in each of these crises. They hold or they rise during episodes of market stress, or in 2022 pullback, for example, it fell down a little bit. So mostly people do liquidate their gold holdings in order to defend their other asset classes, right? However, in the periods after that, because investors are reeling from a market shock, so naturally, psychologically, they look for something safe. So gold tends to also pick up, after that. So Bitcoin is, of course, a risky asset, but also when you have risk on mode, investors also go into riskier assets, right? So the difference, not difference really, they complement each other in a way, but gold is demonstrated more of a defensive asset, whereas sometimes Bitcoin can also mirror the performance of risk assets as well. And we also see how they are correlated to S&P 500. So gold will show either negative or low correlations with equities during downturns, especially. So it means that it helps you to cushion your portfolio loss. Bitcoin, by contrast, tends to move in line with broader risk on assets, and sometimes it does not have that same diversification benefit to gold. With that being said, these two assets do have different uses in a portfolio. So we have equity, stocks, bonds. Some people hold a little bit of cryptocurrency, and then they also hold some gold as well in order to make sure that the portfolio is quite robust. And finally, for gold, there is the institutional trust and usage at the time that we are speaking. So it's widely accepted as a reserve asset, although I'm pretty sure you heard, about the strategic Bitcoin reserve in the US. However, that's not, yet being put into, that's not yet being put formally. So we also have that institutional trust and uses. So central banks do hold gold for its value.
And what about, wording about Bitcoin is a digital gold? Do you agree with that?
I have to respectfully disagree with that. However, I think just yesterday, so we have this session at quite a right time. So yesterday, World Gold Council has released the digital gold platform, which we are trying to trial in the London market. So that's still at the early stages. But that's just, to answer your question whether Bitcoin is a digital gold. I don't think so. Firstly, Firstly, they have very different asset profiles for both Bitcoin as well as gold. Even if you digitalize gold, they will still have that same quality of defensive hedging. They also provide some returns as well, and especially when times are uncertain, there will be that flight to safety to gold. And even if you own gold in a digital form, it will still be backed by some sort of physical gold at the end. So we have that comparison between Bitcoin and digital gold, which I don't think it's the same. On some levels as well, Bitcoin is also they have different purposes, right? So if you want crazy outsized returns, from one point to another, that can be delivered by holding Bitcoins. I'm pretty sure you've looked at the data. And for gold, on the other hand, is that stable, safe haven that you can depend on. So there's that dependability of that asset, whether you own it in physical form or digital form as well. So yeah.
Okay. And the final question, Marissa, if you could leave Thai investor with one or two key takeaway about gold right now, what would they be?
Okay, so the first thing is, if you are looking to allocate into gold or you have not allocated into gold, think about it from a high level perspective. What do you want gold to do in your portfolio? That's a very important question to think about. I was told, I think you've shared also that for Thai people, they like to be on the road and watch YouTube and things like that. So that's how they get information on investments, right? So I think that's something that you can do on your drive home. Think about it as a strategic asset or as a financial asset, because I think a lot of people in Thailand as well as in Southeast Asia, even myself included, right? We look at gold as a few things. So first, jewelry. That's definitely number one, because you can see it in the retail shops, and then we want to buy gold and things like that. So you have gold as a consumer asset there, but also think about it as an asset that is quite tangible, that you can pass on to the next generation, or you can also look at your portfolio in entirety. Are you having a lot of risky assets? If you have a lot of risky assets in your portfolio, that just means that you need to have some allocation into gold as part of portfolio robustness. You balance your portfolio. The second takeaway that I want to share with Thai investors as well is form an opinion. What is your outlook on the world, especially macroeconomic as well as geopolitics, over the next medium to long term as well. And then when you form that opinion, for example, where do you think the US dollar is headed, or where do you see the conflicts, will the conflicts be resolved, and things like that. So once you have a think of that and you form an opinion, then you can revisit as well how you allocate into gold. And there are many ways as well to allocate into gold. You don't have to get something that is beyond your budget. For example, you can get something at a smaller cost or a lower cost. You can get it through providers and things like that. So the thing is, it is everywhere, and you have access to it in some form or another. So that's two key takeaways that I wanted to share with the Thai investors as well on your channel.
Mm-hmm. And you can share to our audience where they can read your research from Local Consul.
Sure. So I've also prepared a slide on that. So as Kun Sao also mentioned to me, a lot of people like to watch YouTube. So of course you have a variety of information that you can have. Firstly, if you like to read, or you like to watch, or you like to listen, all of this is available on goldhub.org. This is free of charge that we provide. There is nothing that that requires payment on this website. So all the information and data you have here is free of charge, and we provide it to the world for free as well. So I hope you can also visit that, or listen to a podcast on the long drive home, for example.
And the audience who want to read or listen this information in Thai can follow our
of course
social media channel.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, I think that is for today, Marissa. Thank you so much for sharing your insight today. It has been a privilege to have the World Gold Council perspective at the time when gold is a record high.
Thank you
and
so
I'm sure
much.
our
And
Thai investor, I'm sure our Thai investor have gained valuable knowledge from you, and we truly appreciate your time, and we look forward to collaborating again in the future.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here as well. Thanks for having us.
โอเค thank you ก็ขอบคุณคุณผู้ชมทุกคนที่ตามชมรายการ TISCO Fun Station Live ในวันนี้นะฝากผู้ชมกดไลค์กดแชร์กด Subscribe ช่อง TISCO Fun Station นะครับวันนี้ผมกับคุณมาริสาลาไปก่อนพบกันใหม่ไลฟ์หน้าวันนี้สวัสดีครับ